Hi, this is Danny Doyle, and welcome back to another, I don't really know what I'm calling this series, the raunchy tops and bottoms Fire Emblem tier list series. And today I'm doing one of my favorite Fire Emblem games. When I ranked the games, this ended up in the number 1 slot, and that is Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones. And with me, as my guest, I have my favorite, and probably your favorite, Wolf Girl enthusiast on the website, Ifolo. So, Ifolo, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, telling people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, howdy guys, I'm Ifolo 8, your favorite Wolf Girl enthusiast. I'm really happy to be here for this one, the long-awaited collab between probably, arguably, the two biggest FE8 fans, also on the website. Really happy to be here for this one. Obviously, this is my favorite Fire Emblem game, perhaps a little-known fact, I don't know, probably not at all. My favorite game of all time, probably my favorite cast of characters in any video game, so I like to think that I know these characters well enough that, you know, we should be able to place them moderately well, if a bit of headcanon is to be implied and stuff. But yeah, I do, you know, your good old Fire Emblem content, a lot of Let's Plays, a lot of things of that nature, a lot of ROM hacks, and a lot of Wolf Girl enthusiasm. I'm sure if you're interested in any way whatsoever, you'll be able to find me in the link in the description. I'm ready to get into this video.
And I am excited as well. You did mention headcanons, and so I do feel the need to make the disclaimer that these are just sort of our headcanons. It's meant to be a more fun and lighthearted video, so if you disagree with any of the interpretations that we have, that's perfectly fine. We're not authorities in any sense. We've played the games a lot, and like Ifolo said, like, we think that we know the characters, but at the end of the day, these are just headcanons. So you are welcome to post your own if you have other thoughts. This is just meant to be for fun. But with that out of the way, would you like to dive in starting with like recruitment order, or do we just want to take characters as they come, sort of like let our hearts guide us?
Well, I think the fun of this is going to be perhaps choosing a good solid starting point, and then I think a lot of the characters are really just going to flow off of each other as we go. Because I feel like in this particular type of list, a lot of characters are going to be implicated in other discussions.
Especially with a cast this small and this sort of interconnected. You know, in a game like Binding Blade or Blazing Blade, you've got people who are sort of isolated from each other, but I feel like everyone in Sacred Stones, with a few exceptions, tends to be really closely related to each other.
Yeah.
And so I guess we can start with Erica, and then not necessarily go to Seth, because I know there's a lot of different shipping options people have.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Erica's very fascinating.
Yeah.
She's I don't know. To me, she was a bit of a hard one to sort of pin down, not putting it in a particularly odd way, but that's maybe not.
No, that is the perfect phrasing to start it at. Set the mood.
For sure. Yeah, we're gonna get, you know, calm and sensual with this one. So I do think that Erica's definitely a bottom, 100%.
So not that hard to pin down.
No, very, very easy. Several characters will probably.
I can think of a few.
Yeah, absolutely. La Rochelle being among them.
Oh, for sure.
It's so Erica's definitely an odd one. I find that it's not necessarily that she's a bottom, it's just that she definitely bottoms out for every single character that she could get with. She's probably like, I don't know, a hesitant switch realistically, but like functionally she's entirely bottom. In the same vein, I would consider that she is like functionally probably quite hetero, but I feel like La Rochelle would change that. Like, she's probably Erica's ideal woman, apart from, you know, the several guys that she can get with otherwise. Including,
like, I know Seth is a popular ship for her. I don't like this one. I feel like that is a huge stretch. But Forde, I think, is one of her paired endings, even though he's stinky. And La Rochelle, for some reason, is not a paired ending, despite the fact that she pretty clearly should be. I think we seem to be on the same page 100%. With that. I mean, maybe she's yearning and Erica is not, but I feel like they get along well enough that if there's any amount of queer awakening to be had, it would be from that couple.
For sure.
And I tend to think of La Rochelle as a switch, or potentially a top, sort of like a top-leaning switch, because she knows what she wants, but sometimes what she can want is to bottom. I'm wondering how you sit with that interpretation.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd say that's a pretty fair one. So this may be a hot take, but my personal belief with La Rochelle is that she is, like, literally just lesbian in a, like, sort of, I guess, bi-lean due to the world that she lives in, if that makes any sense at all. So I know that she can pair with, like, you know, Joshua, Innes, Ephraim, things of this nature. But I do think that none of these necessarily fit her. Maybe Rennac is, like, up there for her, but otherwise I don't think
Wait, do they get paired? Rennac?
I believe so, yeah. He sticks with her. Let's see, that's actually a good question.
I know there's a Dozla paired ending that in my video on her I talked about how I see that as, like, not confirmed but potentially their marriage. Well, I initially thought that, like, because their paired ending talks about how, like, you know, he cries at the wedding, and so I was like, oh, it's their wedding, but someone in the comments, several people actually, pointed out that, like, the phrasing is such that it could be that he just cries at the wedding because it's, like, her wedding but not his, in a, like, you know, happy sort of fatherly way, depending on how you interpret it. So I think you could see them getting paired in the interpretation, but it's not explicit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is definitely... I don't think I've heard your take on it before. That's fascinating. I was always of the mind that it was like, you know, yeah, he's more of like a protector type figure, and he's just really, really happy that she gets her happiness, because he really does hinge a lot of his entire being off of her happiness.
Yeah, sort of that bodyguard, but, like, my employer is more than just the employer, that sort of trope.
Yeah, definitely. He is a company man, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that Rennac gets a paired ending. I believe it states something along the lines of, like, he kind of continually makes intentionally futile attempts to escape from her and then never does. It's kind of like, yeah, he definitely... I guess the best way to put it would be like a tsundere relationship. He's definitely into her. He definitely doesn't mind getting ordered around by her, but he's going to pretend that he does.
Now, I'm not super familiar with anime tropes. Is tsundere the lady doth protest too much type deal, or is that something different?
It's like, let's see. I guess a good way of putting it would be that it's a character, male or female, who pretends as though they hate the person that they love and sort of makes them, like, gives them a hard time often.
So, like, yeah, Helga from Hey Arnold type deal? I don't know if that dates me too much.
I think she probably falls out of it. I guess, let's see, if you don't watch much anime, that kind of throws out... Okay, maybe a Fire Emblem one would be good. So, Severa from Fire Emblem Awakening, where she's like, yeah, I hate you, but you're really cool and stuff. Like, she doesn't tell them that they're cool, but she thinks that they're cool. That's why she hangs around.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for educating me on that, because...
Sure.
Despite loving one of the most anime series of all time, I haven't consumed that much anime, and that I have really doesn't have the romance aspect. Like, I liked Death Note, which doesn't really have the romance in it so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can both agree, though, that light is the bottom.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Death Note tops and bottoms list when.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Well, on the topic of light, we have a light magic user right here. Do you have feelings about Arthur? True. Or Archer, sorry?
I do have feelings about him. Obviously, so, you know, Lou is in the childless. We're going to get into her, but she is very much so tied to how he acts a lot.
Yeah, they have that close little, like, friendship relationship-y thing. And the ages are unclear. I know that, like, Lute could be an adult. Her sprite made me a little uncomfortable. So, that, I guess to explain that with the childs there, other than, like, Ross, Amelia, and Ewan, no one's ages are made explicit, so I just sort of went off of vibes.
Yeah, I guess a small fun fact, both Mur and Dozla talk about their ages in their support. I want to say that Dozla's like 43 or something. He's in that ballpark.
And then Mur's like that, like, I'm 1,000 years old, but I look like a 6-year-old, which...
Yeah.
I just don't want to touch that.
Yeah, that's one of the tropes of all time. But yeah, for Arter, he's definitely a bit of a weird one. I don't necessarily think that he's ace, but I can't necessarily place him within any of the other ones either, because I think that most of the time, with the characters that he can get with, he would default to topping because they would default to not topping. But no, that doesn't necessarily make him a top or a switch, I think, because I couldn't imagine it. Well, no, there's one case I could see him bottoming out for sure, and that's Tethys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that support actually, like, made me really uncomfortable, because it's just repeatedly her making advances and him being very explicit about not being interested. Sort of like played for comedy, which I'm not a fan of.
I agree. So yeah, I guess like he would be in a tentative top, because if we're not considering Tethys, which entirely fair, there's no situation in which he, I think, switches or bottoms.
I can see that. Everyone he's with, he just sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say takes command, but he feels like a more take charge person in both in like that aspect of his life and in the more combat oriented situations. Like, he's the one who sort of gets Erica's army like, hey, we are here to kill the monsters, like, are you gonna help, or am I doing this all on my own?
Right.
And even through the gameplay starts on the front lines, like he's already charged ahead, like, I'm ready to get into this fight, y'all need to catch up with me.
Yeah.
So it does feel like that sort of headstrong situation. Oh, I love Arter as well. I use him in every run.
Yeah, me too.
I know that, like, there's sort of been in discussing the FE8 meta, there's sort of been a revisiting of like, oh, you know, Slayer has been overrated for a while because you don't actually need it to hit kill thresholds, but I don't care. I still train Arter because, like, I love just deleting monsters with him. Even though it's like 5 times the amount of necessary damage, that's funny then.
It is. It's hilarious. He's a unit that I have a hard time training, but I still use him every playthrough. I have a particular support group, so to say. That's a weird way to put it. But 5 characters in a support sort of group that he majorly takes advantage of, and he's a lot of fun. Oh, like one of those not quite triangle, but sort of like pentagram supports, where like each one chains to the next. Yeah, I guess this will be... it is a little bit off topic, but one of the coolest things about FE8 to me is the way that its supports are like built within the game, how they actually function. And so every character from the point of Vanessa and Moulder down to when you get Arter and Lute, they support perfectly in a group of 8. Just it's incredibly flawless in terms of how they execute that. But I include him with Garcia, Ross, Nay, and Lute. Those 5, when they all support together, just insane. Some of the most fun gameplay you'll get out of Sacred Stones. Oh, the early squad. I love Garcia. I know that, like, I don't use him that often, because even though he's better than Ross, I prefer using Ross. I just like the 0 to hero. But there's something about that, like, just sort of here to be a dad. Like, he joins specifically just because he wants to be a better dad, or not even be a better dad, but continue to be a good dad and, like, watch his son is, right. I don't know, I like that, that character that we don't see very often. It's like, basically him and FE6 Barter are the only ones I can think of that, because Fire Emblem likes to kill off dads. Yeah, one of the few surviving dads, that's true. Garcia is my favorite character in all of Fire Emblem, so I'm definitely a big fan. The reason particularly that I find his support thing cool is that him plus Ross plus Naomi is a 5 levels of fire support, so he gets +5 attack, hit, crit, and avoid. Just becomes a demon on the battlefield. 55 base crit with a killer axe, but either way, I guess we can get into what he would actually do. I think there's also for him no interaction ever in which he doesn't top. I can see that. I know that some people would argue the Gilliam route, and my argument for that is that he 100% takes control over Gilliam. But regardless, I don't know. To me, my preferred ship for Garcia is that he goes home and he lives his life peacefully to the end of his days nearby his wife's grave.
Yeah, I like I tend to, paired is the wrong option, is the wrong wording, but like I tend to support him with his son if I use him.
Yeah,
just because I like that bond that they have. I tend to think of him as sort of like, not necessarily like it's completely romances off the table, but he had such a intense love for his now deceased wife that he sort of knows that there'll never be anyone who lives up, and it would be unfair to them if he sort of settled and wasn't fully into the relationship.
For sure, I completely agree. He's in all aspects a very powerful person, and that includes mentally, I think. So he's more than likely completely at peace with whatever his life has. I mean, that's even shown in his death quote. So he's found his peace, he's happy. There's honestly a strange argument to put him in ace, just because I don't think he is necessarily ever going to move past,
I can see
seek
it.
out romance again.
Actually, I think the idea of like, he was a top previously, but sort of the fluidity and moving, I can see ace for him.
Yeah, he does actually talk about like relationship stuff again with Gilliam and his support with him. He talks about how he'll be there when Gilliam gets married and stuff. He'll be a good friend for him and stuff. So he's like a not quite a wingman, but you kind of get what I mean. He's there for him.
So there's actually a funny thing in sort of like the gameplay versus narrative with Garcia and Gilliam's A support, in that in the A support, Garcia encourages Gilliam, like, hey, you gotta ask that girl, like, to marry you. You gotta do that. I will be your best man, etc., etc. But if you get the A support between Garcia and Gilliam, Gilliam has to have a single, like, he has to end the game single because he can't get an A support with anyone else. So it's just sort of the ultimate cruel irony of the 5 support limit, which I'm glad we've moved past. It has its own issues if we have infinite A supports, but at the very least, like, it's that artificial limitation was a little bit, from a narrative perspective, weird, because you get those situations where Garcia can never actually be the best man because Gilliam won't get married.
Yeah, there are very few unfortunate circumstances surrounding that, for sure. I feel like Gilliam definitely takes the he gets destroyed by that a fair bit more than many characters, because he also gets that with Moulder as well.
Oh right, he goes to Moulder to like confess his love, not to Moulder, although maybe. Comment below if that's the ship you like.
I'm down with it.
But he's like, Father, I need your blessing or I need your help, right? Because he's in love with, is it Vanessa he's in love with?
It's Syrene.
It's Syrene, right. Because Vanessa is in love with Inez, and a lot of her supports revolve around that. It is interesting, like, much like Valentia, Sacred Stones has a lot of canonical couples. Even if they don't start out together. Like in Valentia, May and Bowie will always end up together no matter what, and it's the same way in Sacred Stones with... They don't necessarily end up together, but their supports really point towards, like, these two are supposed to end up together.
Right, definitely.
But with Gilliam, where do you think that he ends up? The Silent Knight. Like, I mean, from the nickname Eileen Bottom, but maybe that's just me stereotyping.
I'm honestly pretty okay with that. It's a strange one. I don't think there's really...
Oop. My bad. I went to click on and drag Gilliam, but I clicked and dragged the entire screen.
Yeah, I think that Gilliam, he's... I'm okay with putting him at bottom. I think the only romantic support pairing he winds up with is Syrene, and she's definitely the more... I guess to segue into her a bit, I find her to be a switch depending on who she's with. I think her 2 paired endings are both Gilliam and Kyle, and I personally feel that Kyle definitely tops in that situation, and Gilliam definitely bottoms in that situation. She's just a very, I feel, giving and caring person, and will conform to what her person wants.
I can see that. I'll be honest, Syrene is probably the playable character I know the least about because she joins so late that even though I use her in most playthroughs because she's like a nice filler flyer, I never really get her supports because there's just not time to do that. The only support chain I've gotten with her is the one she has with Moulder. I got it during an Iron Man, like a draft Iron Man I did. And that support chain is just focused around her planning a surprise birthday party for Moulder, which was very cute.
It is.
But also, like, it's framed in a way that the C support and B support, and I think this was intentional, are set up such that it's framed as if, like, Moulder's about to get Me Too'd, because he's like, hey, you know, just so you know, there's sometimes people who aren't comfortable talking to me, but, like, I hope they're comfortable talking to you in, like, the C support. And then in the B support, she's like, hey, a bunch of women have come to me, and they've told me stuff about you, and it's, like, a surprise, and he's like, what are they saying? And she's like, I'm not ready to tell you now, but I'll tell you in a couple of weeks. and then it leaves at that, and I was like, oh shit, like, I love Moulder. Is Moulder about to get Me Too'd? Yeah. But then she's like, the surprise is they wanted to plan a birthday party for you. And I'm just like, what the fuck? It definitely, like, it definitely cemented my sort of humorous enjoyment of Moulder's sort of very stoic, very quiet personality to sort of set up that bait and switch. I know that's probably like it is a more serious topic that is often not great to be joked about, but I think they skirted the line enough that it didn't feel offensive to me as like a survivor, and as a result I really liked that support chain. Sort of like the because they never explicitly say anything, but they do imply that, like, there's something sus going on, and the sus thing turns out to be a surprise birthday party.
Right. Moulder over here worrying about Syrene compiling the Twitter thread, you know.
He's got the mustache for it, right? Like, he's got that 80s porn mustache.
Oh, man. Moulder is a legend. I love him so much. I personally feel he's ace. I think there's no working around that.
I can see it.
He doesn't feel like there... I don't know. I just feel like he definitely doesn't have a romantic drive. He has more of a spirit to be a guiding figure in general.
And I don't know, like, because Judd is not Earth, so the parallels might not necessarily be there, but a lot of religions have sort of like the vow of chastity, and I think that as a result of that, even if he were not ace initially, which I do believe he was, I think that... It's just the drive that he has is more to help people as a guide, like you say. By all functionality, similar to Garcia, I think as a member of the church, he probably just doesn't fuck anymore.
Yeah, probably. I do really enjoy the Sacred Stone's take on religion in that it doesn't really talk about it, like, at all. Mm-hmm. Even your healers are not really religious. La Rochelle, despite being a member of, you know, the entire Rouston royal family, and despite, you know, Mansell being literally Pontifex, a distinctly religious role, they don't talk about, like, gods and stuff. They just talk about the heroes. I find that really cool. And
I'm pretty sure Rouston is referred to as a theocracy, which is
yeah.
Again, with the religion very much tied into the state. But yeah, it is interesting now that you mention it, that rather than worshipping gods, they kind of worship the heroes as religious figures.
Yep.
And the stones, I guess, too, are sort of... Would you call those, like, idols or gods, or I don't know? I am not the most religiously studied person, so possibly there is, like, better parallels in the real world that I'm just not aware of.
I think idols works. I mean, the one instance of them mentioning gods in the game is not by a person, but by the opening narration, just saying that the gods bestowed upon humankind the sacred stones.
Mm-hmm. So and I know that, like, are the dragons gods is a thing that can come up in Fire Emblem 2, in terms of, like, you know, maybe they gave... Because there's some weird stuff with, like, oh, well, the stones aren't actually as necessary as we thought.
Yeah, the power of friendship is all we really need. Or in this case, you know, other powers.
Stat boosters.
Yeah, absolutely. the goddess icon. I guess that's another reference.
True.
Moulder's very, very cool. I guess a good segue point for him would then, I don't know, perhaps it's a weird segue, but it's on my mind, would be Colm. I find Colm to be very fascinating.
I mean, I was just going to say stat boosters to the unit, so
that's
that
true.
Works.
My favorite person, Dragon Shield.
4 strength squad.
Absolutely, love 4 strength. Colm is very fun to me. He and Moulder have a very, very fun support in gameplay for it being light and anima, similar to Seth and Erica. But Colm I oddly find to possibly be like ace leaning, but will take up a role depending on who he gets with. I think he's kind of not really romantically minded. He kind of just wants to go for what he wants to go for. And it turns out, ultimately, so to say, that he and Naomi are the implied pair. And I think in that situation, I mean, he probably takes charge, but otherwise, I don't think he really cares for romance.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the care that, and obviously we've got her and child. I think that, again, that's more just from looks than any sort of canonical confirmation. So don't don't pull out the Twitter thread for him either. But I think that a lot of their relationship, I'm not super high on it just because I think he's a little bit too mean. But I think agree. It comes more from a sort of friendship than a romance. It does ultimately end romantically if you do pair them, as the game seems to want you to do. But I don't see him as necessarily wanting to sort of get down and dirty. So much as just we grew up together in these sort of poor streets. We've spent, I'm stealing the stuff back for you from the thieves because I care about you as a friend, but not as a grand romantic gesture. Which I know there are some people who ardently ship them, and that's perfectly fine. I don't see it personally.
Right. I mean, I do feel like, if the roles were reversed, or if Naomi were male, or any other situation, he's doing the same things that he did for her, as long as she's the same person that she is. Mm-hmm. It's not so much romance as ride or die companionship that winds up leading them to marriage because, heteronormativity and stuff. It just kind of flows into itself in these sorts of sense. The thing with Colm that points me at putting him in ace is that he supports Marisa, and they don't have any sort of connotations despite the fact that he acknowledges that she's beautiful.
Where is she? Right here. I was looking for Red because she says she's the Crimson Flash, but there's no red in her character. These tiny little tassels, I guess?
Right.
One of the units of all time. Hello, I joined 5 chapters after Joshua and significantly lower level and statted than him at base.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
I think Marisa is a top, but she's not very good at it. She to be a little bit more explicit, then perhaps, cover your virgin ears if you're upset about these sort of things. But she fails to she ties knots very badly, or she loses the keys to the handcuffs, or she's just a complete klutz when it comes to topping, but refuses to put down that veneer and is no, I am the Crimson Flash, I must be the most toppiest of tops. That I think she's a very girl fail.
That's really funny. I'm completely okay with this. It's definitely, I think, a more fun take than what I had in mind. So I guess full disclosure, she's my 3rd favorite character of all time in Fire Emblem. So my take on her is that I don't think that she is, I think the way that I would place her personally would be a romantic, but ace when it comes down to it. I think she would take more or less the role of, if my partner wants to go for it, then completely fine with it, 100% cool with it, but she doesn't really have that spirit in her. But yeah, I'm completely cool with the mindset being there of the top. She definitely, in my opinion, doesn't have the sort of ego that would drive necessarily
Well, and you probably know her better than
but
I do, because I've only used her once in a draft run.
Oh, okay.
I think I
Gotcha.
got the support she has with Gerik, and that one sort of
Right.
felt like very egotistical, but... Or no, it was with Tethys, because they were competing over Gerik.
Yeah,
Over his affections.
that one. Yeah, I don't particularly love any of Tethys' support in hindsight, but she... Yeah,
Really brings
I
out
think
the
this
worst in herself and others, doesn't she?
She kind of does. It's really a shame.
Yeah, because, like, I don't hate the idea of, like... I have always interpreted, and I guess we're sort of... Did you want to say more about Marisa before we move on to Tethys, or...
I'm fine to move on to Tethys, yeah.
I've always interpreted Tethys as the dancer who is a sex worker thing, like whether it is actual prostitution or just like erotic dancing. I've always felt that Tethys was heavily implied to like take up that industry specifically because she, without their parents, she was the person who had to take care of you, and they were just in this situation where that's the only option she had. And I do like that, because that's, it's a very real thing that a lot of people unfortunately find themselves in that situation. But everything else about her, like all of her support chains, I want to like this character so much more, but she just feels toxic, and I don't really know where that lands her on the scale, because
I guess sort of
there's toxicity everywhere.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I don't think that. So I agree with your take. I do think that she's definitely into that line of work. But I guess the thing that I would place her as is a top out of necessity.
Oh, that makes sense. That's where the money is.
Right. Yeah. Force the scenarios. Make sure that she has control. And she very much commands that with her personality and her presence. I don't know what I think about her in terms of where she would land if she were, like, by herself, so to say. Most of what I have to work off of for her is her talks and her conversations with others.
And I think, like the experience has shaped her because she's been a dancer for so long that maybe there isn't any sort of separation anymore.
Yeah. I feel like, I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but it brings me a little bit of closure to put her and Ardor next to each other as tops because they can't interact that way.
Oh, true. We got the Beyblade going on.
For sure.
Clashing tops.
They're going to let it rip, or hopefully not, honestly. Yeah. I don't know. She's fine being up there by herself, I think. I do think ultimately her best pairing is Gerik, because I find that my personal take on Gerik is he is a hardline bottom, full stop for everybody.
Ooh.
Maybe that's like a flaming hot take, but that's
but keep cooking, because I am here for it.
That is my wholehearted personal belief with Gerik, because to be completely and perfectly honest, he does not have the slightest bit of top energy. He is the most bottom individual I've seen. He lives his life as a bottom, straight up. He put his life into someone else's line of work because they moved into it first, that being his best friend, who Saleh killed. Gerik's entire motivation for becoming a mercenary is that his best friend, as a kid, wanted to be a mercenary, and he couldn't just let his friend go off and get killed, so to say, which you might think exudes top energy, but in reality, he just followed someone else's life path, and then when that person died, he took up the mantle. He just kind of lived someone else's life. So there's instance 1 of him deferring control to somebody else. Instance 2 is the fact that Garcia is the person who gave him the scar across his face. He completely and utterly bottoms to Garcia, in every sense, I'm just saying. He does have mentorship features, so to say, but I don't think that necessarily implies any sort of control. He just kind of guides, so to say. Perhaps you could place him as a power bottom in some circumstances.
I can see it. I think that
Tethys completely, utterly takes him. whether that's a good thing or not, I do think that she is his best pairing because it takes her off the table for everybody else, and it kind of gives him yet another person who will take control.
Well, and I think that they have a more wholesome relationship than perhaps our dunking on Tethys would lead one to believe. I do also like them as a ship, yeah.
I do think that they kind of fill out each other's lives in a way that makes sense. And yeah, I don't see any instance of him ever topping. So that's about all there is to it. And, I guess that also feeds back into the Marisa thing with, I don't think that she's, I think she's ace, but I think that she's hetero-romantic. Mm-hmm. So she would attempt at one point to take control. Actually, this is perhaps referenced in their, maybe this is actually the ultimate cook, so to say. In their ending, he's like bothered to find out that she's bad at everything. So you're right about the girl fail thing. He's like, she definitely returns the affection, but she's bad at everything else. That literally is just completely correct for both of these characters, because he needs someone who's going to take control. She cannot take control, and she doesn't have that drive to. So maybe bottom and ace here is actually canon. I'm just saying.
This could just be. I mean, wait for the Shadows of Stones, and we'll get that confirmation in their support conversation. They'll just turn to camera and be like, "I am bottom. I am ace."
with their faces completely symmetrical facing the camera. I'm
yeah,
so
we get the Lynn POV from the beginning of Lynn mode where she just turns to camera and she's like, "You have a weird name."
I'm so fine with that.
If we're talking about complete fails, like, I think there's no way this guy, what's his name, like Curtail? Carlisle, yeah. I think there's no way he ends up anywhere other than bottom. Like, he pays people to step on him.
He does, for sure.
If there were, when I did FE7 with Tatsunami, she asked for us to make a specific no bitches tier just for Sane, and if we had a no bitches tier, it would be just Carlisle.
It would be just Carlisle.
Because he's very much like, and he's the king of the incels. I call him the king of the incels every time I go Erica route. He's really obnoxious because FE8 thrones are the same as FE6 thrones, so he's like that Sakai boss, the Swordmaster. But I want to smack that smile off of his face. I guess he doesn't really have a smile, but I still want to smack the face.
I completely agree with the incel take. It's completely correct with him. He's a case of a bottom who one day has grand ambitions to be Switch, and he fails, and it works. It just works.
He has Switch in his profile, but he has never topped and never will.
Never.
I'll probably never bottomed either, just because like no one wants anything to do with him.
So we're placing him as the tentative Discord kitten.
He is the tentative Discord kitten. Even Kalec is grossed out by him, and like you fucked up when Kalec thinks you're gross.
For sure. The bratty bottom Discord kitten of Sacred Stones is Carlisle.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
I guess on that note, I feel like Kalec is definitely a top, but it's not necessarily out of a drive for that type of thing. It's more that it's his own ego driving him as a sense of power. Mm-hmm.
No, I can see that. I used to think the coolest bit of writing ever was his combo with Joshua. Where he like goes into the idea of like, I've left you behind because I'm just so much greater than you now. Or even just like the generic boss quote where he's like, it's not personal, you're just a stepping stone. Like, it feels like you say, just that drive for power in all situations.
He basically woke up and he said Joshua's mom has got it going on, but not enough, and then he took her throne. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's not much more to him than just that he wants to display his power. I guess...
Pretty one-dimensional character, but like, he makes for a good villain despite that.
Yeah, I think he might be my favorite villain character in Fire Emblem low-key, but he's very, very fun to interact with. I don't know, I just personally enjoy characters who are more or less evil for the sake of being evil because of some ego-driven thing. I feel like he works out.
Like Valter type deal, or that one felt a little over the top to me, which is the obsession with murder.
I think he does it a lot better than Valter. I don't necessarily dislike Valter, but I think that he leans into his, I guess, yeah, like you said, the bloodlust a little bit much. Which, I mean, I guess throughout supports and things you find out that it makes sense, but still, I mean...
Wait, does he have supports as a creature campaign character?
No, his backstory is explained through the Ducel Cormag support.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense, yeah.
Essentially, Ducel is the owner of a cursed relic that essentially drives you to bloodlust, and Valter's weapons broke on the battlefield, and Valter was already not that good of a guy, so he just, like, ripped a lance out of Ducel's inventory while he wasn't paying attention, and it just so happened to be that relic, and that relic imbued within him sort of brought out all of the evil in his soul, and it really put it on full blast, and that made him who he is.
Interesting. Do you think that obsession would land him an ace then, just because
I think
the only real drive is like for the evil, for the killing, for the glee and the glory and the watching? Not glory is the wrong word, but like the enjoyment in watching people die, you know, like he kills Cormag's brother, Glenn, just because like he wants to.
Pretty much, yeah. It is very fascinating how that one works, but yeah, I guess he's like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the male praying mantis. He's completely okay with just going for it once and then dying or killing. I mean, I don't think he has any drive in that capacity whatsoever. He's got an entirely separate set of beliefs and morals and things. I guess if you could even call them morals.
Yeah, morals is certainly a word for it, but... I agree with you that I like Kailik better, although I do think the gemstones in general are just really well done as recurring villains that don't feel old, partially because you see them mostly in cutscenes, rather than like killing them multiple times. Like, other than Reeve, I think they each only appear on the battlefield once, not counting like the fake out Kailik who runs away and becomes a Cyclops.
Right.
Which I really like that.
I do too. I think that I could use this opportunity to sort of defend Valter a little bit in a strange sense. Not so much his character, but the two, I guess, weak points that people would pinpoint in the story of FE8 that I don't actually think are weak points. Both the points at which he lets Seth and Erica escape, and the point at which Ephraim, so to say, defeat them at the end of the Renval chapter. My personal belief there is that obviously you see him let Seth and Erica escape because he wants the war to continue. He kills Glenn because he wants the war to continue. So my belief is that he purposely lets Ephraim go because Ephraim is a powerful man. He wants to see him do more, become more powerful so that he can get the glory of an even greater kill. So that's why I think he lets Ephraim go, or why Ephraim, quote-unquote, escapes and wins. It's not so much that it's Ephraim that did that, it's that he intentionally lets his soldiers get killed, or perhaps even kills his own soldiers in that instance, and because like you don't see them again and stuff. I don't know. That's just my personal take on it, though.
Well, and there are boss conversations where like even his subordinates are scared of him. Like in the Chapter 8 boss's boss convo, and then death quote, he'll say like, "You'll wish that I'm the one who killed you. Like, Valter is going to do so much worse than I would." So I can buy that he would kill his own men just to, again, allow Ephraim to get away. And do it in such a way that Ephraim, like, sort of takes that glory for himself, but probably didn't earn it.
Right.
On the topic of the most controversial Perfect Boy Prince, how do you feel about him?
Like approximately half of my name is comprised of his name, so if that has any indication, he's my favorite Fire Emblem Lord. In terms of how he actually ranks on this, I think that he is... I think that he tops in every scenario that he gets with somebody, but he's not in it for that. I think he just... Actually, no, that's not true. I think that he, in the same way as La Rochelle, is probably a switch dependent on who he gets with. But it's a little bit strange, I suppose, because, like, I think that Tana and La Rochelle both definitely top him, but I don't think that he is necessarily ever a bottom.
He doesn't pick fights he can't win, so
exactly
he'll bottom for them because he knows that he can't win that fight.
That is the perfect explanation. And I don't think that there's anybody else that he has a paired ending with that I would place him as a bottom.
I know he has one with Erica, but again, that is non-romantic. Get out of here with that.
All of the people who... I just hate that. Whole... Yeah.
It strikes me as, like... this is a bit of a tangent, but it strikes me as, like... Because I do really like the relationship Erica and Ephraim have as siblings. Yeah. It strikes me as someone who can't imagine... either an edgelordy, like, I want to make an incest joke, haha, or someone who can't imagine caring that much. Because I do really think they're the most important people in each other's lives. Like, even when they get married, I think they would still say that they're the most important people to each other.
Right, I agree.
And I think that it's someone who can't picture having an important and loving relationship that is not romantic to that degree. And I get it. Like, I'm not close with any of my biological family. My closest relationship is my wife. But I also don't think that that's the default. And I think that, like, they do just, like, truly deeply love each other as siblings. And, even if Erica ends up with La Rochelle and Ephraim ends up with Tana, they're always going to love each other more than they do their spouses, but not in an incestuous or romantic way, just in, like, they really care about each other. And part of that is because they're twins, too. I know that can be, like, a thing. But,
It 100% makes sense that, twins would care about each other perhaps more than they would care about other people. Yeah, crazy concept, but,
And they're the only family they have left, because their parents died.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. That's all they've got. They grew up together. It's a whole thing. When you grow up with people that you don't wind up having big, major personal and moral disagreements with, people that you actually care for, those relationships grow, they foster, they get better. They're entirely there for each other, and that's completely fine on a completely and utterly platonic scale as siblings. There's definitely no hot take there, I think. But yeah,
on the topic of their sort of, like, shared sibling affection or whatnot, the third, not quite their sibling person, Lyon, I think might be a natural jumping off point. Oh, that's Noel. This is Lyon. I'm an idiot.
I would say so.
Like, he's not their sibling, but they sort of, because they constantly visited and they had that close relationship, it feels a similar bond to me.
Right, for sure. He is one that I kind of deliberated on for a while I was, like, sort of thinking about the flow of everything, and I honestly still don't know if I have a place for him. Because I think that he is the sole instance in which Erica doesn't bottom. But then in a strange turn of events, I don't know if he bottoms in any other circumstance. Because I feel like he also has this... And maybe this is a hot take, but I also feel like he might be a little bit ego-driven, so that if he doesn't top, he's gonna feel bad about it. Like, it's him failing his partner if he doesn't top, but then Erica still tops, if that makes sense.
I can see that. I think, like, he does definitely have that insecurity, and that is what Fomortis is able to, like, prey on, sort of like the crack in his soul is that insecurity. Because he talks about also feeling overshadowed by Ephraim, since Ephraim is better able to fight than he is. So I can see that insecurity driving him to be not quite a toxic top, but, like, there is some toxicity there, and that, like, the motivation is that he is afraid of looking bad by bottoming, because there is sort of that sort of stereotype that bottoming is negative.
Right. I'd say, that's about right for him. I don't necessarily know if there's anything more to say on him, because really I feel like that breaks it down pretty well. I guess another thing about Ephraim really quickly is that for him, I don't know if he would even be... He might be, like, aromantic, but willing to go for other avenues, because his whole support line with Tana doesn't really imply that he, like, loves her in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's entirely what it is. Maybe Ephraim is just aromantic, because that would explain a lot of the motivations for a lot of the things that he goes for, both with Tana, Erica, Lyon, even Innes, I suppose.
And all of his paired endings are, like, marriages that you could see as specifically being political.
Yeah.
Because it's the lords of other countries.
Right. I guess a point that I kind of skipped over as pertaining to that, but also with Rochelle, is that for her, I think that all of her male supports are her, and this is why I think that she's lesbian. I think that all of her male supports are her and her partner trying it once or twice, not really caring for it, but still being there for each other. And then on the flip side of that, if she gets with Erica, it's like, this is the perfect match, and that's why she's able to completely be herself in that regard. But like with Ephraim, she gets flustered by the sight of, like, his shoulder, as she doesn't have really anything going. Even Josh was a little bit of a weird one. I guess Innes or Joshua would be a good segue point.
I mean, everyone likes the funny hat. We can talk about the funny hat.
It is a really funny hat, and personally, the hat, that by itself is a top. I mean, it's not a top hat, but you know what I mean.
But it's on top of him.
It is on top of him. Maybe the hat is the character that we're reading here.
This is like the Futurama brain slugs. The hat controls Joshua.
I'm so fine with that. He's interesting. I don't know where I would place him either. Do you have any thoughts on him?
I could see Switch. I could see Ace. I could see anywhere, honestly, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like he just sort of really goes with the flow. I know we learn later that, like, the coin flip was rigged and that he'd already made up his mind in terms of joining Natasha. But I do still feel like he has that very cavalier attitude of, like, I'll see where things take me. Which is part of why he left court. So maybe that is Switch in terms of, like, I don't necessarily think he's Ace, although that is a valid interpretation, but I think that he's just fine with whatever others want from him. Sort of the indecisive, and maybe that also means that he's bi, to go on those stereotypes
probably
too.
Does.
But sort of just a down for whatever.
Maybe Joshua, so I think I'm fine leaving him in Switch, but, like, maybe in the same way that Gerik is the most bottom of all time, Joshua's, like, the low-key most top of all time. Mm-hmm. Because while he's, like, kinda sorta letting fate guide him in a sense, the fact that he would rig a coin flip because he made up his mind, I mean, he definitely rigs a lot of coin flips, I would say. There's probably no way that he doesn't.
I've said a couple of times that if Kaga made FE8, the coin flip would not be rigged, and the recruitment would require you to win it.
That would be pretty funny.
Literally flips a coin, and if you fail the coin flip, he just crit kills Natasha.
That would be pretty funny. Yeah. I'm fine leaving him in Switch, but, like, maybe there's this plot here where for 15 more minutes I would go on to declare him the most top in the entire game.
In the alternate timeline.
Right, he's got that energy where he definitely commands his own life path and he uses the guise of luck to drive him.
Actually, you've convinced me. I think that he is a top, much like his hat.
For sure. I mean, he has a paired ending with Gerik, and you couldn't possibly tell me that they wouldn't be. I'm just saying. Yeah. Someone go make some art, or well, I'm sure it already exists.
Oh, just Google image search that.
Do what you want with this information that Gerik and Joshua are the far ends of the top and bottom spectrum, respectively.
Oh, for sure. He wears the top hat, and Gerik wears the bottom cat ears.
100%.
This is the wannabe Discord kitten. This is the real Discord kitten.
This is the real Discord kitten.
On the topic
perfect.
of kittens, we've had cat transformations. Transformations. Oh no, we have Mur and Child. But what about her grandfather?
Right. Honestly, he's probably Ace as well. He basically just adopted Mur and stuff, and he's willing to be a guiding figure for all people. I guess a lot of people would consider him to be a rather shallow character, but even in his like only scenes, he is depicted as a very giving, warm, and guiding figure for the clearly suffering Lyon.
Yeah, he's kind of like, rather than being a character, he's honestly more of like a sort of lore piece, I would consider, just because like he is kind of tied to the Demon King stuff. We do see him in those few scenes, but it feels more like he's part of Mur's backstory and part of like there to demonstrate Lyon's evil, right? Like he's the too pure for this world, and then the way that we know Lyon has fallen too far is he's willing to turn him into the Draco zombie.
Right.
Or does Reeve turn him into one? I actually don't remember.
I think it is specifically Lyon using the Demon King's power.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the justification for the dragon zombies almost entirely, which is a little bit sad when it comes down to it, because there are 2 dragon zombies inside of the thing as well, and I've always taken it, the implication being that those were formerly Mur's parents.
Yeah, I do as well.
It's kind of brutal how Mur gets treated in the story low-key, but I do think that it pretty much solidifies more of it in his role as having no desire.
I get it, yeah. Even though, you know, canonically we know he does have children because he had Mur's parents, or at least one of them.
Is that actually? I thought he
was her grandfather. Is that not? Maybe I'm wrong.
I believe I could be wrong, honestly, but I thought he was her adoptive father.
You're more likely to be right than I am, because you know far more about this game than I do. But comment below which one of us is actually right.
Well, I guess I can basically put that to rest, because I do know that she says father in her quotes with him.
Okay, so then it would have to be the adoptive father, yeah?
Yeah.
And then the ones in the shrine of the biofam. That's so sad. That is actually very sad. On the topic of sad, like, Joshua's mom, also tragic ending, and that she, if you go Erica route at least, she, like, only finds Joshua just as she's about to die, and sort of was kind of in mourning for him, even though he wasn't dead, like, that he was away for so long.
That cutscene, the first time that I ever saw it, broke me as a kid, because for my first 2 playthroughs, I thought that Joshua was a mini-boss, and I didn't realize that he was recruitable, because I was like 5 when I first played this game. So I was like, wait a minute, Joshua, that guy from way back then, is the prince of this country, and it like shattered me. So I don't know, she's very fascinating for sure. I honestly don't know where she would rank here. She has no interaction with Carlock that would imply anything other than he doesn't get any, and she doesn't necessarily have any other. I don't feel like she would ever necessarily bottom for anybody, not even in a strange, horrible alternate timeline where Kalak is a good guy.
Well, so far we've got the only Swordmaster to be a bottom is Kalak. Even Marisa, like, in the Ace, we considered if she were not Ace, she would probably be a top. And Ismaire in the, like, Creature campaign is a Swordmaster. So if we want to maintain that pattern, we can put her here.
That's true. Or we could make everything balanced and leave her as a switch.
We could do that as well. Keep the tiers even.
Sword. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Honestly, that's a good enough justification. She doesn't have much story presence, which is sad, but
yeah,
it happens.
I like her a lot, but I don't think there's enough to go off of to really define what she would do in this circumstance.
We could do like a speed run of all of the there's not that much to go off of characters, these being the four kings. Fire Emblem Four Kings.
I just watched your video on that, so that's great. Yeah, I don't know. I think all of them in their own ways. I don't know. I feel like both Hayden and Mansell are definitely ace.
This Mansell is here, Hayden, right? And then Fado's Erica and Ephraim's dad.
Right.
He dies in the opening cutscene, so we get so much characterization.
Let's see. I guess through Ephraim's supports, we can infer. Well, through his supports with Ephraim and through, like, super low-key Hayden bottoming for Fado in text.
What? Wait, what? Okay, because, so then we move Hayden up to bottom?
Hayden's in bottom. And I think that puts Ephraim's dad at top.
At top, yeah.
Because, like, low-key, everybody respects Fado's dad tremendously, and, like, super low-key, Hayden gets destroyed by everybody in the entire game. Erica domineers over him by taking some of his soldiers. Innes is constantly a figure that just pushes against him. Even Tana disregards his orders several times. He's one of the most bottom for sure.
I mean, do we want to skip the fourth king and jump onto Tana then on that segue?
I think so. Tana, I wholeheartedly believe that Tana's the top. She takes control of her entire life circumstance. She's so confident in who she is. I think she gets a bad rap for the whole Ephraim romance thing because she is, in a certain sense, the Sita of this game. But she's like a really powerful, individualistic character. She knows what she wants and she goes for it.
Ephraim Rout treats her cruelly too by starting her in that jail cell in a way that feels frustrating for someone characterized as headstrong as her to be like damseled immediately for no reason. Yeah,
I agree. And then I do think that the Ephraim Rout does give her one of her more powerful moments where instead of, well, either if she's dead or in Erica Rout, La Rochelle gives the motivational talk to the Lord, but if she's alive and it's Ephraim Rout, then she's the one who gives the motivational talk. I don't know, she's a very strong character. I respect her in a lot of ways. Also, she's an insane unit. Please, everybody, try out using Tana one time. You won't regret it.
It's funny because normally I tend to think of like the first Pegasus as kind of being a shoo-in for top, but I think that Vanessa can't be anything other than a bottom. Like she's smitten with Innes in such a way that she is constantly admiring him from a distance, and then like if he gets anywhere near like looking at her or anything, she immediately freezes and gets all like, ooh, oh no, how am I gonna handle this? She has to go to Moulder for like help with her crush. He comes up in every single one of her support conversations. And he has possible paired endings that are not her. I feel like you're doing her a disservice if you do that. But
yeah, I agree. It's a strange circumstance with her because I wind up pairing her with Forde whenever I use Forde. But I do think that Innes, I think she's just straight up a bottom for Innes. She's a very strong person, but when it comes to her particular desires, she wants Innes to take control.
She kind of feels like Cordelia in terms of like the way that she has a crush on Crom, where Innes is like her lord.
That is a very good parallel. I think she does it better than Cordelia as well because it's not her whole thing.
True.
But true. Even in her like supports with Moulder and stuff, she's that is very cool how that works. Yeah, she's definitely a bottom for sure, and I think that puts Innes as a switch just because he couldn't necessarily. I think that he bottoms for all of the people he can get with who are in the switch and top tier, but then
he bottoms for Ephraim. He bottoms for La Rochelle.
Definitely.
Can he get with Syrene? I forget.
He can't, but I think. Well, I know he has a support with Joshua. I don't know if that one. I don't think that one leads to an ending. But I mean, we
can decide that it leads to an ending, though. We can decide that there's a pairing.
Sure. I'm completely okay with that. I think they're actually pretty cool with each other. And in that instance, Joshua tops 100% of the time. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. He's safely in switched here. You know, he definitely. This could be a weird. He's storyline tops his father, so that's funny.
Yeah, just sort of in the, obviously not in the FE4
Right,
sense of things, but from a personality standpoint, like, I think that it carries over kind of one-to-one, even outside of the bedroom. He has that very standoffish, I guess, personality. Like, you can see it on his face more than anything.
Yeah.
Kind of smug, kind of, like, confident.
I do think that there's perhaps an odd circumstance where many people would place him just like as a default bottom because of his standoffishness, but honestly, I think his ego and his confidence are both warranted and good for him. He knows exactly what kind of person he is, and though he's a little bit, I guess, crude and brash, he definitely has the skills to pay the bills.
And speaking of people with skills, we haven't talked about the best and most centralizing unit in the game yet.
True.
I know that the sort of like default easy answer would be Seth top, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong, but I'm curious if you have any counter thoughts to that.
I'm okay with either top or switch. I think that the only instances in which he does switch is when he is put in a position where the person over him is a more powerful person by lineage and not so much by their moral standing or anything.
Interesting, because to my mind, the only person of a higher lineage that he ends up with ever is Erica. Because I do think that Seth is het, not as like an insult, like he's an ally, etc., etc. But yeah. I struggle to see Seth as anything other than heterosexual, which, again, if you don't,
I agree.
That's fine. But he can't really be with any other, like, who royally does he end up with other than the Omega bottom?
He doesn't wind up romantically. I was thinking, this is, I guess, a weird insight into how my mind works, but I was specifically thinking of the dialogue in Chapter 9 of Ephraim Route, where he winds up essentially deferring to Ephraim because he has to, even though he completely disagrees with essentially the way that things are going to function.
And honestly, I kind of wish Ephraim had listened to him, because then we wouldn't have to play Fort Rigwall. That's the map that discourages me from going Ephraim Route. I'm like, I could go Ephraim Route, but the first map...
Yeah. To be fair, you're then followed up with possibly the best map in the game, in my opinion, Chapter 10.
The Dusel map.
Leads into Dusel. Yeah, I love that map. That might be my favorite Fire Emblem map.
Dusel's definitely my favorite unit in the game, even if he's not, like, the strongest. He's still pretty good, but I love this guy.
He's tremendous. For him, I think that he is where we have Joshua as the most top and Gerik is the most bottom. I think that Dusel is the most ace.
I can see it. All of his supports tend to be, like, more about the past than sort of, like, romantic bonding or any sort of sexual yearning.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's Aero ace, honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think he is both ace and Aero, the absolute peak of it. He has quite probably no feelings in that regard. I feel like if they ever at any point wanted to give him that route, they would have had a super low-key subplot romance with Selena.
Yeah.
But they have the most platonic respect for each other that I've ever seen out of two characters.
And I do really like their relationship as well. That sort of like, gone up together as co-workers in the same company that is changing drastically, and the ways that they respond to it is different. Like, obviously, companies, army, and country and all that stuff, but the parallel to the more real world feels like that, where, because they're both they're two of the original gemstones, and the way that they react to sort of the evilification of Grotto is different, but both of them understandably so. Like, I know Selena's a little bit memed on as, like, she's just my honor, why would she ever still side with Grotto? But she doesn't know that the king is possessed, right? So...
Right. She's a very powerful individual, I think. She definitely gets a lot of flack, and I guess it's kind of like I understand where it comes from, but I also think it shows perhaps a lack of reading into her character. One of the coolest things to me of all time, and it's something that may honestly be unique to her, is that she has proximity dialogue with characters that doesn't necessarily implicate them in battle. So if you place Ducel within 3 spaces of her on the battlefield, they'll talk, even though they haven't entered combat. It's really crazy. It's one of the most heartfelt and genuine conversations in the entire game. And that's why I specifically placed Ducel where he's at, and quite possibly why I would place Selena as a... I think she's, in a similar vein to Tana, one of the most top individuals in terms of how she carries herself, but probably doesn't have any desire as in terms of this type of topic.
So you think she's also ace?
I think so. I think that if she were ever in a circumstance where she would go for some sort of relationship, it would be with the guard, but it's not even because she yearns for him, it's just out of sheer respect. Because she values him more than she values literally any other person.
Yeah, I agree.
She is wholeheartedly devoted to her country, and it shows.
I think
it's
she
like
might, Yeah, no, I can see that.
If there were ever the odd circumstance where the guard were like, I need to take another bride for the sake of this country, she would step into that role flawlessly. But I don't think it's out of romance or desire on either one of their part.
Yeah, more duty. We need the... if Vigard didn't have any children and they need an heir for whatever reason.
Right. That would 100% be where she would fill in there. And he's a weird one too, isn't he? Because he doesn't really have much, I suppose, living dialogue to go off of.
Yeah, he doesn't have much of dialogue at all, because it's all ... because he's possessed. And,
he is
or not even possessed, he's a zombie, he's Monica. Darling.
He's literally known as the Silent Emperor, so that's very interesting.
I guess Zombie Vigard would definitely be ace, because he doesn't really have any drive at all. Calling him ace even feels like an exaggeration, because it gives him more humanity than he actually has, but
right.
We don't really get, even with the backstory that we're given, we don't really get much on him. It feels a little bit disappointing, but not everyone can be a super fleshed out character. I'm fine putting him in ace and leaving it, unless you have a hotter take.
I'm fine leaving him in ace. I do think that he's one of the more centralizing characters that gives the world a sense of being lived in, because you have all of these people that knew him and that respect him and love him, and he's clearly in a position that he earned. Mm-hmm. But then because of the events that play out prior to the story, he doesn't get to show that to the player. I very much like him. I go back and forth on whether he or Fado are my favorite general in this game, but I don't know, he's fascinating for sure. I do think it's a fair take to not think much of him, because at the end of the day, you could just classify him, throw him in the bag of he's another Fire Emblem villain, and honestly, that kind of just works for him.
Well, and it's been a while since I've done Ephraim route, which is where you get more of him. I tend to default Erica, just because I like her better as a character.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think as a result, I miss out on some of because you get more of him when you go Ephraim route, and you get more stuff around Joshua and whatnot when you go Erica route.
Yeah, I think the power of the guard as a character is his ability to influence other characters to react, even though he doesn't really do anything. All of the characters around him hold such an unending respect for him. Glenn, Cormag, Selena, Ducel. Even Ephraim has a revering respect for him. He sees him, he's I know this is the guy. He clearly has all of this good to him, but why are you putting this war? And it winds up panning out, and you find out why and stuff, but...
God, you're making me you're making me, again, I constantly yearn for, like, a Sacred Stones prequel that takes place, like, back when Garcia was in his prime, and we get the backstories on all of the gemstones, and Vigard, and Fado, and Hayden, and, like, Garcia can be the Jagan, because that's when he was, like, the greatest hero of all time.
Right.
But I think that if there were then we would get more information on Vigard, and that would be really cool. Because as you say, like, he's definitely inspired all these people. I mean, like, he's had a huge impact on Selena, who is, to my mind, probably my favorite villain of Sacred Stones, just because of the way that she's written.
Yeah.
But instead, we unfortunately live in the timeline where Sacred Stones didn't sell well enough to get a prequel.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just my desperate love for this game, but it's always so fascinating to see to me just the sheer depths some of these characters go to. Even though characters like this don't really get much screen time, you can see through the world that the characters live in that they have had their impact and stuff.
We mentioned Monica a little bit ago. Do we want to talk about Orson as a result of that?
I'm cool with that, yeah. Orson being my second favorite character in any media of all time. Well, not any media, but second favorite character in this game.
I think it's really, he's got a heartbreaking story, because, like, it's easy to hate him, right? Because he did the whole traitor thing, but I can, even though I don't think it's right or justified, and I don't think, it's still, like, I can get it, right? Like, he just completely broke and clung onto the barest justification of being able to get his wife back. And even though, like, we from the outside can see, like, this is a shadow of Monica, this isn't what she is. She's literally just a zombie saying, darling, darling, darling. It's like a doll more than anything. Like, to him, because he was so broken and so much, like, he cared so much about her that in and of itself, he was able to delude himself into thinking that that is actually her.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's kind of why I have a hard time placing him, because, like, he's frankly just so single-mindedly in love that there's no, like, I mean, I guess the easiest place to put him would be Switch, because whatever Monica is feeling on a particular day is what he's going for. He's so wholeheartedly devoted and in love with her that whatever she wants is what he's going to go for. Whatever makes her feel the best is what's going to be the best for him.
He really is just a wife guy, which, like, again, we're saying this about someone who did the evil betrayal stuff, but, like, it's hard not to feel bad for him. It's hard not to sympathize, because he really would do anything for her.
Yep.
You know, in various other games, I've put other wife guys up here because of their dedication to their wife, and I think that it would be unfair to Orson not to also say he's a Switch, because he's just really just cares about what his wife wants.
Yep, I completely agree. He is very much so the definition of a wife man. I completely agree with that. I don't know.
I don't know where to
cool.
go from here necessarily. Do you have someone who your heart cries out for?
I guess we go ahead and I would say first probably cover Natasha, and then perhaps go into the Cavaliers after that.
Yeah.
Natasha's like a low-key top, just because all of hers, and I'm just gonna, this is my personal belief on her, she's completely hetero. All of her supports are male. There's no situation in which she doesn't get with a guy. So between Cormag, Seth, and Franz, apart from Seth, I think she's, well, I guess also apart from Joshua, but like Loki, I don't like them as a pair.
Yeah, me neither.
I think she would take control. She's a very forward person, given, I mean, part of her story and her character is that she literally just runs into battle to save people's lives, so she's going to take control of her destiny.
I mean, she leaves Grotto to try to defy destiny, to find a way to prevent the, like, bad stuff that's going down there. And then, like, her supports with Noel lead to her learning about the upcoming earthquake, and if they get their A support, she ends up, like, going back specifically to help out against, or not against, but, like, help out with the earthquake victims.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that as well. I think top is the good place for her.
Yeah, that definitely works. I guess we can segue that into Franz because she supports with him. I don't know where I would place Franz, honestly, because he's
a little goofy.
He is a little bit goofy, for sure. I might put him in Switch or in Ace. He doesn't initially feel like a bottom. Oh,
I can put him in Ace.
What? For Forde? Oh, that's that's interesting.
Wait, didn't you say Switch or Ace?
I was talking about Franz, but
I misheard you. Okay. I mean, I could put Franz in Ace then, yeah.
I'm cool with that. He's one of those that I don't really have that many strong opinions on Franz. I think that he has a really cool story, but I think that most of his story hinges too much on other characters for him to necessarily be his own guy.
The only support chain I tend to get with him is the Seth one, because I like to make them both paladins and sort of have them, like, stomp the maps together. As a result of that, like, their support chain is kind of just about him, like, training under Seth, which is understandable, you know, like, it's the Jagan and the Fledgling Cav. You see it with Lowen, you see it with all sorts of other pairings, and as such, we don't really, like, that chain doesn't really get much about Franz, and, I haven't done my research, unfortunately, so I don't really know what else there is to him, so I'll take your word for it.
I've done extensive research on Christmas Cavaliers in this game, because there are 3 sets of them, funnily enough, and Franz, his only pairing that actually winds up with any romantic implications is, well, I mean, Natasha, of course, but then also Amelia, and he's, I don't really feel like he has those desires. I feel like he's just there for the people that he's there for. He believes in them, he's wholehearted in his, I guess, earnest compassion for them.
He's just a stand-up guy.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Just a cool dude.
His brother, on the other hand, like...
His brother.
I do think his brother is, like, a goober. Complimentary and also insultory.
Yeah, Forde is probably the character that I hate that I love the most in the series. Because by every metric I hate him, but by every single one of those exact same metrics I love him. Personally, I would just say he's in Switch. I mean, he's kind of a lazy goofball of a guy, so whatever his partner's feeling, he's cool with.
He probably, his only stipulation is that he needs to paint you like one of your French girls, prior to anything.
Definitely.
I love that his supports have him painting on the battlefield. This game can be very silly sometimes.
His foreplay is that he draws you in a very romantic light. Or I guess you could call it his Forde play.
His Forde play, oh my Lanta. That's it, we're done.
Yeah, that's the end of the video.
No, we need to finish with his other half, Kyle, the more serious, stalwart green cavalier.
Yes, the greenest boy of all time. I think he's just straight up. Him and Cormag are probably my 2 least, like, not that they're not informed opinions, but they're the ones I have the least to say about. I just straight up think that they're tops. I don't ever see a situation in which they bottom, and it's really just that simple for me.
I can see it. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's mostly vibes, but I can like, very much see them in the top role and nowhere else.
It's not even like a need for power or they're just such straightforward people that I think that whatever partner they end up with would simply defer to the bottom role with them.
Sort of like, you know, without necessarily even, like, maybe wordless. It just sort of
probably
happens.
Is, yeah.
I can see that.
Specifically, what comes to mind for Kyle is his support with Syrene. I actually prefer those 2 together over the Syrene Gilliam support, but I know that's not a popular take. The reason for that is because they're both very, very, very green, and I'm a big fan of green characters having green children. But
you must continue the bloodline, the green hair bloodline.
Yes, green them until they're green down to their bones as units, everything. All of their stats green.
My friend Stigurna would approve. Her favorite units are all the green characters. She actually has done like various Fire Emblem games, green hair only playthroughs.
That is tremendous. I love that. I know that there's a ROM hack out there called like Fire Emblem Midori or something, which is exclusively green characters. So that could be a fun one.
Oh, like Kaze's daughter.
Yeah, I think Midori is the word for green, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh,
I could be.
I didn't know that. I'm assuming Japanese.
Yeah, which I could be completely wrong. You'd want to ask like Tatsu or somebody who actually knows Japanese, but I find it to be very funny if that's the case, that Kaze named his daughter green.
Well, we do have one more green character, and I feel like Dozla is asexual. I think that he just takes joy in everything. He has such like a boisterous, happy personality, and I think that he's too busy having fun with other stuff to... Like, I wouldn't even say he's, like, sex repelled, or even, like, sex neutral, just sort of, like, sex ambivalent. Not in that, like, he's not aware of it, but just it's not something that ever comes to mind, because he's having too much fun with everything else. I love this guy's support chains so much.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Have you seen his support chain with Garcia, where, like, they try to reclass, and they're just bad at every other class?
Yep, I love that one. It's really funny. In the Japanese version, they replaced the... They actually had a drinking contest in the Japanese version, and in the English version, they replaced that with them, like, burning each other's beards off with staves. That's hilarious.
And
I agree with your take.
They try to be archers, and they like fire axes instead of arrows.
I love it. It's fantastic. And then I guess Garcia can become an archer ultimately.
Oh, true, on promotion.
I did at one point give him S rank in bows. That was one of the more difficult things I've done.
He stole it from Amy, the Nidhogg.
But yeah, I think I agree with your take on Dozla entirely. It's kind of like I guess a good comparison would be those like cinnamon roll type characters where you know they definitely have the potential for relationships. They definitely could pursue those sorts of things, but they don't ever feel that need to. It's just if it happens, it happens, and if not, then whatever.
For sure. Moving right down the list, just because we only got a few left and there's not really any common links between them. How do you feel about Saleh?
I think he's like a pretty solid top. Most of his interactions with like, I mean, he has Gerik and Erica as two of his defining situations in which he tops, but there's nobody else that he really, I guess, would ever switch. I guess he's sort of in the same boat as Kyle and Cormag, where it's just an unexplained, unspoken, he simply tops and that's the end of it.
And we just sort of get the aura of it. Makes sense,
yeah,
makes sense.
I think so.
Rennac, on the other hand, I feel like is definitely a bottom.
Probably,
like just getting dragged along by the ear by La Rochelle, but like he's into it.
Yeah, he's like a low-key power bottom. He doesn't want the control. He's completely okay with deferring it. He probably gets a sense of, similar to how Kalak would get a sense of power out of forcing the top, Rennac gets a sort of sense of power out of forcing the bottom scenario.
For sure.
He definitely has that smug aura to him where he's like, yeah, I've got you now, and then he's completely getting destroyed, but he's like, I've got you.
Look at his face. Look at the expression on his face. Like, he knows we're talking about him.
He does. He agrees. I really love Rennac. He's funny.
He is certainly goofy, and he can steal Speedwing, so that's nice.
Yep, it is really nice. The most powerful trait in a man. He also, in Erica Route, I mean, he gives you 2 stat boosters in 1 chapter. That's pretty peak bottom behavior right there.
He's a service bottom. Like, that's his gift of service.
Yeah, he gets finished and then he goes and makes you breakfast. I'm cool with that.
The execution date has been moved up. Where does Noel end up? Like, our favorite little depressed downer.
The sad boy. I think he bottoms for Lyon, but then he aces for everybody else.
I think I'm gonna put him in bottom just off of the Lyon stuff because that tier needs to be filled up. We've got so many ace characters. Turns out a lot of characters in Sacred Stones just don't want to get down to business, and honestly, we respect that.
I really do. I think it speaks to their characters that they're not. There's really no characters in this game that I feel, other than possibly Tethys, are driven by this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Carlisle, but
cool.
He doesn't accomplish it.
Right,
we hate him for it.
in Sacred Stones, we discourage sexual behavior entirely.
Honestly, the two most sexual characters we've talked about are also the two characters we've had the most to criticize. So
exactly.
I see it. Reeve and Glenn, I don't have hard reads on either of them. Do you?
I think Glenn is in the same tier as his brother for basically the same reason.
We can even put them next to each other.
Yeah, I think that it's a weird parallel to make, but I do it because they're older brothers. Both Glenn and Forde, I think, have two of the most powerfully written characters in the game, while being very underspoken themselves. And Glenn kind of just fills that role in the same way that Cormac does, where it's like, you know, he would probably ultimately simply just be the guy on top. I mean, that's just kind of how it would wind up being, but I don't think he's necessarily, you know, he has no motivations for power, control, anything like that. It's just simple and plain.
Yeah.
And
no,
honestly,
I see it.
Reeve is just a bit of a mess. I mean, he could literally be any of these at any time.
Yeah, it's hard to get a read on Reeve because he kind of just feels like he wants to cause the chaos.
Yeah.
Which I guess, like, he could be a chaos switch. Like,
that's true.
He's a switch who wants... So, okay, hear me out. Because chaos switch... He is a chaos switch in that when he's with the top, he's a top, but when he's with a bottom, he's a bottom, because he's making it as uncomfortable as possible for everyone else involved.
That is completely
and he sort of
the correct
thrives on that energy.
That is actually a flawless take on him. I love that. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a really funny ROM hack out there where you can recruit the boss characters of Sacred Stones, and where, you know, you get him towards the end as a bishop going into two big monster maps. On the map where the Demon King spawns, he literally just betrays you and levels up to 20 and joins him for the final battle.
That feels so in character. That feels so in character. I actually kind of love that.
He's like, you've defeated me, I will now help you take down the prince. And it's like, he helps you take down the prince, and then he just betrays you. It's really funny.
That's very in character.
Take on him.
Well, if y'all have different takes than us, feel free to leave them in the comments. And while you're down there, or on your way down, go ahead and click on the link to Afolo's channel. Give them a like, a follow, a sub, all that fun stuff, because some great content over there as well. And regardless, have a wonderful day. This video is brought to you by my patrons. They actually voted on which game I would do tops and bottoms for next. So, a big thank you to Gameboo, Fyrant, Emery Lafleur, Cordelia Frey, Jamie Collins, Marin Karen, Thick Moulder, George Grenville, the 7th PM, Danielle Kalaskis, Jagan is an Est, Caius Cole, Tailored Muffin, Dr. Majalis, Herc, SUP, Gabe the Green, Control Alt Aegis, Jeff, Autumn Kelsey, and TB. Your financial support is what makes my silly little videos about topping and bottoming Fire Emblem characters possible. If you are interested in supporting the channel, there is a link to my Patreon below, which comes with a variety of benefits, including voting. I mentioned that this video was voted for, and that's one of the benefits of the Patreon. But please only subscribe to the Patreon if you are financially capable of doing so. I don't want anyone going broke over any Fire Emblem videos. If you can't subscribe to the Patreon, totally understand that. I still appreciate the support from subscribing, liking, etc. on the YouTube channel, and that doesn't cost a dime. But regardless of what you choose to do, I hope you have a wonderful day.